is the CFO position, well, no, I'll hold that one for last. Yeah, there is a question here saying the statistics that we posted there, that is international statistics. Trinidad is not a big place. So when we talk about financial services companies, we talk about 6, 7, you know. This is international statistics here. Most CEOs are locally are ACCA qualified, and that is because most accountants are ACCA people. But that will soon change because we're seeing people moving away from ACCA and they're doing CPAs, they're doing CAs, but it will take some time because if we look 20 years ago, 30 years ago, ACCA was the only thing that was offered in Trinidad for chartered accountants unless you migrated to the States. Yeah? So I hope that's... But let me put some to the panel here. Yeah. Is the CFO position gender biased? And my answer to that will be no, but Keith, what do you think? I want to bring some things out. The CFO position, again, let's look in Trinidad and Tobago here. The company that Miguel bought over, because the CFO there was a lady by the name of Katrin Kumar, you know. She was the CFO of Algico. We had CFOs of other companies, and some of the companies' names will come to me quickly, but I just want to pass it on to Keith. So do you think that CFO gender bias?
I think that the situation is changing. I am sure if you were to look at the corporate heads, maybe 20 years ago, it was male dominated, and I think now women are generally taking over most things. So I would say if you're talking about the CFO of the future, it's likely that most of them are going to be women, because that's the general trend. And I've not seen anything to suggest that trend is going to be broken. Yeah. At all.
And you're talking about Trinidad and Tobago?
No. I'm talking about globally.
Globally, okay.
Trinidad may be a particularly bad case. But, well, I mean, be careful how I use it. The situation with Trinidad and males may be kind of acute. I expect in Trinidad the environment is going to change materially, maybe as soon as the next 5 years.
Yeah.
More women.
Sure. Let me change that to Miguel. I have one here in asset management company. Do you think that the CFO should be included in the investment management decision, especially where some of those investment funds offer implicit, explicit guarantees to investors?
I think that in general, because of in most of the cases, because of the background of the CFOs, I would say it would be good to have them as members of those committees or teams, but no, not the only decision maker. Okay, I mean, I think that's what there should be a balance. I mean, you allow one person or like the CFO to make all those calls. I think that's a mistake. Okay. I think there should be
Ian, as the leader of the largest asset management company in the Caribbean.
That give guarantees.
Yeah, that give guarantees. Yeah.
And definitely, CFO is part of generally any investment decision. But I would say that in most organizations, it's going to be keeping rules. Because you would then have your investment committee made up of specialists in that field. Basically, all sitting down in a very complex way, looking at how we're going to get that money back. So, that requires cross-section of skills. And I think CFO's role, typically in that scenario, would be to say, okay, when you offer guarantees, and there are specific guarantees,
yes.
you need to be able to evidence that the reserves of the company is going to be able to back you up.
Yes.
And I think in that particular case, the CFO is important because they are basically going to be giving you the information around your ability to withstand and support the guarantees.
Gregory, what do you think?
I think I'm on the same page. It's about helping to strike the balance.
Yeah, I want to mention something here, and this is just my view of the landscape. I think in a lot of instances, CFOs in Trinidad lack some finance knowledge, and on an investment committee, they come up short. They come up short in discussing the pricing of bonds, the valuation of bonds, the valuation of equities, and that kind of stuff. And I think that is a gap that needs to be filled. Yeah, and once that can be filled, I actually see no problem with it. This question, however, was written for you, Ian. You know, in the current economic climate, how can the CFO bring about positive financial change in the organization, taking the expectations of investors, shareholders into consideration? In your opinion, what are the metrics for success? I suppose it's a two-pronged question. The first part is how can they bring about positive financial change in the organization?
Well,
and then,
I think as I said before, CFO is the people. So being able to validate initiatives and decisions that wider management is taking, CFO's stamp of approval then becomes critical in order to really take something forward to the board for a decision. Right? And so that's perhaps the second one.
the second one, what are the metrics for success,
Well, I mean,
in your opinion?
for CFO, I mean, the CFO is tied indirectly to the company's, performance. But I think it goes way beyond that. It's the ability to give good advice and be able to withstand, in today's environment, you have a lot of different accounting policies that you have to adhere to. Things around contingent liabilities, around, the rules you have in the corporation. So, and even, if I were to step back into the banking industry for a minute, most people think that when you speak about things like care assets and how you're providing for losses, that it's the chief risk officer. But actually, the pen is held by the CFO, as Jerry would know. So, when you think about being able to stand up and represent and be accurately reflected in financial statements and you take it, you just into account. A successful CEO is somebody whose assumptions and whose provisioning and whose guidance can withstand the next year, because those things are assumptions on future performance. And when you look at variances thereafter, you will know how well the CFO advises the company and advises the shareholders, because that's what they're doing in financial statements. And you could also bring in the audit to that point, when the CFO has to go through that. But ultimately, the CFO, I think, make a case for how we provided for the external environment properly in our financial statements.
Yeah, okay. Well, there are a couple of questions here which seems like career advice, and I would suggest that the people see me after. I don't like, I'll be around for a bit, so if you can come to me after and we can discuss, what steps I should take, I'll be free to discuss that. I don't want to discuss your thing in front of the audience here. But I want to deal with one here. Well, there's a question here. I'm not too sure if it's for the Minister of Finance, but the question says, how would you, and I'm not too sure who you is, I'm not too sure if you is me, but Larry Hawaii is not here, but how would you reduce the national budget deficit if you were at the helm of the Ministry of Finance? And that is a question I am biting at the bit to answer. But let me put on the table, I wouldn't answer it today, but let me put on the table here that I question whether we have had budget deficits over the last 5 or 6 years. And let me explain that. We have had budget deficits, and when I actually looked at the results at the end of each year, we have had either small deficits or small surpluses, because we have not spent 40 to 60% of the PSIP. Now, I don't know if you all understand the PSIP, but the PSIP is the Public Sector Investment Program. Now, when you create a budget and you don't spend 40 to 60% of your PSIP, you really can't overshoot your budget. So your actual figures at the end of the day come in at either small surpluses or very, very small deficits. So our deficits have never been as high as the ministers of finance claim it would have been, or the opposition say it would have been at the beginning of the fiscal year. you know, and I keep talking to various ministers of finance saying, why don't you let us know, you know, what the actual position is instead of telling us, well, what the next budget is, you know, and that's what goes on in Trinidad and Tobago. At the budget time, you don't come and say, look, this is what we said we would have done last year, this is what we did, and this is now what we will do. They come every budget period and say, this is what we will do. So like, for instance, in many budgets, we have built probably a dozen hospitals in Point Fortin. Because every budget, for the last 5 years at least, we have been building hospitals in Point Fortin. You know what I mean? So I want to put that on park, but when I do get the job as Minister of Finance, I will answer this for sure. Yeah? This question is going to open up this to the panel. The bottom line has been mentioned several times. How does emotional intelligence tie into this model of thinking, and how does HR assist with filling this gap? Pete? You know?
Ooh, I suppose that's a non-finance question.
Clearly. Yeah. Miguel, you want to take a stab at that one? Yes, all right. The bottom line has been mentioned several times. How does emotional intelligence tie into this model of thinking, and how does HR assist with filling this gap?
Again, I don't think that, you know, objectives, you know, necessarily, you know, contradict. I mean, I think that you can have emotional intelligence, you know, prepared executive. Your CFO could be emotional intelligent,
and still achieve bottom line.
And to achieve, you know, the bottom line. I think that it's critical in an organization. Your human resource support. It's actually the most important element in an organization. Your human capital, you know, human capital. So if you take care of that, and you make decisions, you know, finance decisions sometimes are, you know, make tough decisions sometimes. But I think nothing goes.
It's not mutually exclusive. Yes, that's right. And what I've been hearing from the conversations that we've been having here is that the CFO of the future has to be a person who can achieve that triple bottom line. And to achieve that, there must be a certain sense of emotional intelligence, you know? So let me go on to another a question here. Oh, this is another career guidance question, you know? So there's a question here about, on the slide, they say only 3% of MBA/accountants make it to the CFO position. And this is just a guess. Because this was a survey that was done by E&Y, and my guess is that a lot of accountants stay with their ACCA qualification and never really go further. You know, and I'm making this guess from the samples of people we have seen in the Masters of Finance and MBA programs. It is not littered with accountants. In the MBA programs, we have about probably less than 10% in that program having ACCA, and in the Masters of Finance, we have probably about 10. On a large scale, we might have about 18%, but most times around 10% of the people in that program have an ACCA. So I think it has more to do with ACCA taking that next step, embellishing that qualification. And I believe that the more they embellish the qualification with, say, something like a master's in finance or a master's generally, they get to that CFO position because they get to see the big picture. Yeah? They start to look forward as opposed to that continual looking backward, which can taint your vision sometimes. It's like driving a car looking in the rearview mirror. You know what I mean? So that is my guess at this particular one. I have a question here that, do you think the financial crisis changed the role of the CFO in a negative way? You want to take that one, Gregory?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, the truth of it is that, you know, if you take a long view of things, it's by nature cyclical, right? You've gone through periods where we want the MBA as a CFO because we want to grow the business, and we want to, and you know, that guy who counts the beans doesn't grow businesses. And then we've gone through the crises like the financial crisis and the elements of the external environment that have said, well, you know, we've had the Enrons and we've had the people who haven't done the basics right. So those become more important. I think what's different is I think this cycle has been longer lasting than expected. I think it was pretty much a perfect storm over the last 5 years of a lot of things that have made governance and compliance, a critical element of things. And I think that's built a very, very strong foundation around the basics that we keep talking about for governance. So in terms of the CFO of the future, financial crisis was a good thing because I think it embedded the need for that basic skill set. I think the prolonged nature of the recovery has also been a good thing because it's kept the need for those basics at the forefront of people. For us as finance professionals, it creates a larger need though because the wish list is larger, right? I want the guy who can be the controller, but yeah, you got to sit in on strategy and you got to sit on an investment committee and you got to manage real estate and you got to manage everything else under the sun. So it's a good thing, but it's demanding because it means you have to build a wider breadth of experience.
Keith, what is your view on that?
Well, it seems to me that the world of the CFO and the changing world does indeed require different skill sets between 2008 and now. And the CFO is going to continue to be required. And but the CFO has to grow materially, and I don't think that the CFO of the past is going to make it in this new world. I really do think that the degree programs that you have are going to be particularly important to grow the skill base of our finance professionals.
Okay. I have 4 more questions here, and I have a couple of questions here for people who asking really career advice. Just see me after, and we can discuss. Yeah. There's a question here that's saying, how valuable is the Masters in Finance? How would it add to my marketability in the global space as opposed to other MBA programs? It really depends where you want to go. If you want to be a CFO, I think a Master's in Finance is something that you want to do. Again, it all depends on your background training. If you have a first degree in accounting, if you have a ECC or something like that, you want to embellish it, that is where to go. Now, someone could debate that, well, probably I want to go further than just a CFO, sorry. I want to reach CEO's status. Now, if you want to do that, MBA would not be a bad bet. It would not be a bad bet. But you wouldn't get the depth of knowledge that you will get if you do a Master's in Finance. So like, for instance, if you do an MBA, you may have a choice of 2 electives that you can do in the finance program, but you would miss out on derivatives. You would miss out on probably risk management. You would miss out on a whole host of things that if you did the Master's in International Finance. Yeah? Is it advisable to pursue a non-finance, MSc, MBA, do strategic planning to become a CFO? A CFO at the end of the day is somebody who has a good command of the fundamentals. Yes, you take it for granted that the person understands his accounting standards and stuff, but he has a good grasp of the finance. He can make sure that that company has the right capital structure in place. He knows how to go out to market. He knows how to value investments, bonds, etc. But at the end of the day, it is about executing leadership. Yeah? The person in that position will have reporting to him or her a financial controller or treasurer or something like that. And those people are the ones who will keep sharp on the accounting standards, who will recommend to him whether these bonds, these equities are correctly priced and that sort of stuff. And he must have leadership potential. He must be part of that strategic cabal. You know what I mean? That cerebral center that can take this company to a different level. You know? And then he positions himself in a place, and when I say he, I mean that humongous C, that means he and she, position himself, herself in a place to take over the company at some point in time. Yeah? Yeah, and the final question we will facilitate it. In terms of sticking with the theme of how CFO got there and ensuring we are on the right path, we saw statistics on qualification, experience, background. But to what extent did sponsors in organization play in these people getting to that position, I would assume? How can one differentiate themselves? And I think I kind of speak to that. Let me open it up to Miguel here. How important are sponsors? And before Miguel answers the question, let me put my perspective on it. How important are sponsors to your development in an organization? I believe that when a CFO gets to where he is, he has certain stakeholders that he needs to satisfy. And one of the major stakeholders are the board members. The CFO talks to the board on a regular basis, whether it's quarterly, half-yearly, annually. The CFO talks to the board regularly. And you have to make sure that you forge relationships. You know, progress in life is about that. You know, leading people and forging relationships. Miguel.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that you know, this issue of who sponsor you definitely has to do with how you deliver as a leader. I think that you get to this type of positions not only because of technical knowledge, not only because of your MBA or your Master's in Finance or whatever. It really has to do with you know, the way you interact with people, the way you treat people, the way you convey your messages. I think that is what is very critical. You're going to get people to support you and sponsoring you, I would say, based on what you perform, what you deliver to your organization. And to me, it's important, yes. I mean, in life, not only it's all about personal relations and how you treat people.
Yeah?
Trust. People support leaders that they trust. Trust that they can do a good job, trust that they are ethical and bring good stuff. So people are not going to sponsor you until their credibility and line and that's it. So how you build that relationship, and you disagree. I mean, some people do you, okay, what school you went to? Oh yeah, and that's my age school. And they have a point of reference to me where you would have gotten certain values from that. So some people look at family background. But most people in corporate environments now, they look at the track record and they look at what you've been able to deliver. And now in today's world, they go back and say, has anything that you ever done had a problem? And build that trust in the track record. So I think it's a 360 kind of view. And it's really how you manage upwards. So strategically build trust. And not only with people in your current organization or where you are, the boards change. You know, I mean, you have 3 or 4 boards in a 10-year organization. So you have to be able to build your own personal brand in order to attract sponsors. Not the other way around.
I would like to say that question of sponsorship is really important, and most of the faces I see here are fairly young, so that it's really important for you to understand that you're not going to make it only by your strong skills and great intelligence and how bright you are. It's really about, I think someone asked a question about the emotional intelligence. It's really important that you have a sense of what to ask, when to ask, who to speak to, how to speak to people, how to dress. It's a whole package that you bring to the table, and it's not just a qualification. So getting a sponsor is likely only, as Ian would have said, if the person trusts you, and that trust is likely to be a trust that was won. It's not something that is given, and so that you have to perform and conduct yourself in a way that that you are going to attract a sponsor, and somebody wants to see you do well. And most people want to see you do well, but they're not willing to risk their careers on someone who they feel has some material flaws. And so that you have to round out the package, and sponsorship helps because your sponsor could probably guide you, if you're willing to listen, guide you on your weaknesses and your strengths.
Well, I think we're 5 minutes over time. So I just want to wind up here. I want to thank you for being a very pleasant audience. But I want to kind of summarize what I've heard here today. What I've heard basically is that the CEO of the future has to, one of the main qualities, he has to be a leader. He has to be a leader. And one of the things that we did not discuss is that he has to be able to deal with the fast-paced environment, change in IT, and all of those sort of stuff. He got to be able to interface with a whole host of stakeholders, not only the regulators, the brokers, the people in the stock market, the investment people. He has to be able to interrelate with the board members. He has to interrelate with the people outside of the company, the customers, and that kind of stuff. Depth of knowledge is not sufficient. Breadth of knowledge is not sufficient. Yeah? Coming in here, when we talked earlier about qualification, having knowledge of accounting standards is not sufficient. Yeah? You need to embellish that. Yeah? And you can do that many ways. Yeah? At the end of the day, the CFO is considered a significant player in the organization. The CFO will always be considered, the CFO of the future, a strategic thinker. Yeah? And somebody, despite what my close friend on my right will think, but it's somebody who can significantly position himself to take over the leadership of the company itself. Thanks a lot for your patience.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just a few formalities. At this stage, I just want to firstly say that the panel has charted a very clear and defined role for the career of CFOs, and for all the young people in here, I think you have a pretty good idea as to how you can mold your career now. First, let me thank the panel. As I said at the start, they were distinguished. And they certainly proved it in the Arthur Lok Jack Business School. We pride ourselves on having the business community inside of the business school in keeping with our authentic learning philosophies. And that was quite well demonstrated here tonight by the very capable panel we had. We certainly heard from them real life stuff, what it is like, what it takes to make a CFO. And I want to ask you to give them a complete round of applause.